What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video on the channel. Thank you for tuning in this week. Today's video is going to be a bit challenging. I probably would describe it that way. Came from a situation, kind of an encounter that I had at the gym, kind of stemmed this topic idea, and I just want to bring this to you and kind of give you my thoughts on this. And hopefully, if it does challenge you, then maybe it helps us grow as Christians. So if you guys are looking forward to it, please stay tuned. Let's get into it. Alright, so this topic actually stems from an encounter that I had with one of my friends at the gym. This was like the end of my workout, and I was in the sauna trying to get an extra sweat of extra toxins released before, I was done for the day. And my friend was in there and he was doing push-ups, and I was like, oh wow, that's really good form. And he's like, oh, thank you. And then that got me thinking about how many of us as Christians actually are living our Christian life and we're doing improper form. We're doing things wrong, to put it plainly. And when we do things wrong, we exercise the wrong muscles, we can create injury when it comes to actual physical exercise. Same with our Christian walk. We read scripture and we interpret it the wrong way instead of the way it's supposed to be, interpreted. We interpret it to read it a way that will suit us, that, we don't have to change, because that requires, effort and discipline and change. And we do this with improper form. And it's leading us through a life of disappointment. We build ourselves up thinking, God promises this or God promises that, when, he's not, we're reading it differently and we're interpreting it differently than what he's actually saying. So I want to bring up some points from scripture to kind of illustrate this a little bit better, and hopefully paint a better picture and give you guys an understanding of what this kind of looks like. So first scripture I want to bring up is John chapter 3, verse 17 and 18. Now, we all know the common scripture, John 3:16. John 3:17 is quoted too, but not as commonly as 3:16, right? For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son. There's love, right? So people see that and they're like, God loved the world. And then they read 17. For God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. And then verse 18. Whoever believes in him, meaning Jesus, is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already. They have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. So some people will actually take this scripture and they'll say, see, Jesus was not even sent into the world to condemn the world. So we can't condemn, we can't judge people. We can't tell them what's right or wrong, because Jesus he wasn't even sent to do that. But here's the key difference, is what people don't realize is Jesus was sent into the world to save the world, right? He was not sent to condemn the world, because the world was already condemned. We were all sinners, and the wages of sin is death. So what Jesus was he was the alternate path, a way out of being dead forever, a way that we can now be reunited with God. if we believe. There wasn't that option before. There was not that option before. So he was sent not to condemn the world, because we were already condemned without him being sent. And a lot of people will read that and they'll say, see, we're not supposed to judge. We'll just let people do what they want. Let people live the way that they want to live. It's not my place to tell them what's right or wrong. Actually, if you're a Christian, it is your place. You're supposed to tell people if they're doing stuff that's wrong. You're supposed to tell them. And sometimes the common saying that you guys have heard, some people need tough love. It's still love. Even if you're correcting somebody, that does not mean that you don't love them if you're correcting them. It actually means that you love them if you're correcting them. Look at this. Matthew 23, verses 13 and 33. Really verses 13 through 39, but I'm gonna highlight just verses 13 and 33. It says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to." And then jump down to verse 33. "You snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell?" Now this is Jesus talking to the, teachers of the law back then. So that would be kind of equivalent to like pastors and whatnot, like the people of the church that are esteemed to have known or know the scriptures. And Jesus is reprimanding them. Now, this is strong words, right? I mean, he's saying hypocrites, snakes, brood of vipers. Like, so does that mean that this is not love? No, he's correcting them. He's telling them what they're doing that is wrong. Even Jesus did that. And you might be thinking to yourself, Alex, yes, but that's Jesus. He was sinless. He didn't commit any sin. So of course he has the right to correct people. But we have the Bible. And if we read it correctly, and we understand it and interpret it correctly, we are supposed to correct people if they're doing things against what the Bible is too. We are supposed to. We are held to that standard. Another example that a lot of people I think will take out of context, but before I even mention that, I wanna bring up this scripture. Malachi chapter 3 verse 6. It says, "I the Lord do not change. So you descendants of Jacob are not destroyed." Now let's think about that for a second, okay? He says he does not change, right? You've heard the saying, the same yesterday, today, and forever. Like God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He does not change. So because of that, in Malachi, he says, "I the Lord do not change. So you descendants of Jacob are not destroyed." Why? Because he made a promise with Jacob. And because he made a promise, a covenant with Jacob, Jacob's descendants are not destroyed. Because he's holding that covenant, the covenant that he made with Jacob, okay? So if he doesn't change, and he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So any sort of laws and whatnot that he gives back then is still the same, right? Going back to all the festivals that we observe and everything in Leviticus 23, which I'll link that interview up there if you haven't seen it with my sister. You can go back and watch it and hopefully learn something from that. But on that same note, right? On that same note, I'm going to bring you to Leviticus chapter 11, verses 7 through 8, okay? And this is talking about the clean and unclean animals. And this is what God was giving to his people, telling them what is clean and unclean, okay? Now, follow me with this, okay? Because there's a point I'm trying to make, okay? So it says, specifically in verse 7, he mentions a specific animal. And the pig, though it has a divided hoof, and then the rest of like verse 8, it says, do not eat the meat or touch their carcass. Speaking of the pig. So he lays it out plainly so that there's no confusion. He says, do not eat pig. Do not touch the meat. Do not touch the carcass. Now, we're going to jump forward to the New Testament in Mark chapter 7, verse 15. This is Jesus talking, okay? Talking to the Pharisees because they were asking him, which I'll come back and cover. It says, nothing outside a person can defile them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. Verse 19. In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. Now, that verse 19 portion is in parentheses, not in Jesus's words. That was inferred by the writer or whoever wrote that, not in the original manuscript, actually. If you go back and you study and you look, that was actually not part of the original manuscript. That is something that people in translations have actually put in there to interpret it a certain way. Why? Because a lot of people eat pork, right? So they will take this verse, Mark 17, verse 15, nothing outside a person can defile them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. They take this and they're like, see, we can eat pork. We can eat pork. But if you look at the context of what Jesus was talking about and what the Pharisees were asking him, it was regarding eating with unwashed hands. He was addressing eating with unwashed hands. But oftentimes, people, other Christians, will take this verse and they will use this as an argument as far as why we are allowed to eat pork. When clearly, back in Leviticus, it says specifically not to eat pig. And if God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he does not change, then the laws that he gives in Leviticus are the same. Jesus is not going to negate those laws. So we have to be careful about the way we read Scripture and the way we interpret Scripture. We have to make sure that we are living the Christian life and exercising it with the proper form. Because incorrect form can lead to injury. Not just physical exercise, but our spiritual exercise as well. We have to make sure that we have the correct form, the correct understanding, the correct application when we read Scripture. Don't read it for personal gain and read it to try to twist it to make it suit your lifestyle. If you're living a lifestyle that goes against what Scripture is, and you are struggling with it because you're trying to find things to make it suit what you want it to say, that is wrong. You are going to get injured. You are going to get injured. So I don't know if this is clarifying for anybody, if this helps anybody, but if it does, please comment your thoughts below and let me know. I just felt very strong that I needed to bring this topic forward and discuss it with you guys, because it is very, very true that we need to exercise our faith correctly. We need to have the proper form in our faith. So it is very crucial. So thank you guys so much for watching. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Share it with your friends. And please stay tuned for next week's episode.